My name is Hossein Fadai, and I'm the head of the EMG Secretariat. I'm very pleased to welcome you all to this EMG Nexus Dialogue on environmental aspects of minerals and metals management. We are honored today to have a distinguished panel to address this topic, which is very important and addresses one of the critical issues relating to sustainable development goals, and also relates to the mandates of several UN entities and actors, and has also been in the attention of member states in the last few years. So we are very much delighted to have you to address this topic today. I would have some starting points to introduce the panel and also the agenda and the proceeding of this dialogue. But without further ado, first and foremost, I would like to welcome Ms. Ligia Noronha, the Assistant Secretary General and the Secretary of the EMG and head of the New York office, to provide her opening statement and speaking points to us. Ligia, over to you.
Thanks so much, Hossein, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone here today. It's indeed a pleasure to have you all. And it's such an important and timely topic, the Nexus Dialogue on environmental aspects of mines and metals, for the simple reason that this is so interconnected and intertwined, both environmental, economic, and social, aspects of mines and minerals, given also their contribution to a variety of SDGs, whether it's SDG 1, SDG 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. You can look at all the SDGs and you will find the importance of the contribution of mines and minerals and metals. And the mining industry, as you know well, colleagues, has been the mainstay over time of many regions and many places, but it has had its environmental and carbon footprints, and that is also what is of importance for the discussion today. It has, over the past decades, however, also been given a considerable scrutiny by civil society, by member states, because of the high-profile environmental disasters that we've had, including the failures of tailings dams, and also human rights issues. Through this resolution that we will be discussing today, which forms the key focus of this dialogue, the UN Environmental Assembly is joining a long list of entities which share a common commitment to having mining change the way they do business. UNEA has done this through two very important resolutions, one in 2019, when it had the first ever resolution on minerals resource governance, and then in 2022, in the resumed fifth session of UNEA, which is the resolution that we will be discussing today. It has been a long and productive 1.5 years of implementing this resolution, and you will hear the details and the convening of the Global Intergovernmental Meeting to be held next week in Geneva. You would have heard more from our co-chairs, and I welcome them, but unfortunately they are unable to join us in the panel today for various reasons, but they're very much here, and welcome to both of them. Allow me also to say a few words on the importance of this topic for UNEP. While minerals and metals are so important for jobs and incomes, and an absolutely essential component for the transition to clean energy and a green economy, they also create environmental impacts: mountains of rock dust, growing mine tailings waste, biodiversity loss, pollution, dust, reduced quantity and quality of water, which impact human health and well-being negatively. These issues create problems of environmental injustice, and they also create problems of human rights, and therefore result in a reduction in the social license to operate, which is of central importance for minings to have a good operational environment. And with the growth of renewable energy and related technologies, we're only going to see an acceleration in the demand for minerals, such as the battery minerals for steel and copper. This acceleration may impact negatively not only local communities, particularly indigenous groups, but it may also lead to future displacement and have effects on human health and human rights. And hence, it's so important to focus our attention on this blind spot in the climate discourse and bring out these true costs of also the global energy transition, so that once these trade-offs are made manifest, we can address them in a proactive way so that there is more of a win-win situation. So how do we then look to all of this, and how do we look to also addressing it from a benefit sharing perspective? And this is what this particular dialogue seeks to address. Because it may require focus on responsible mining and responsible governance across the value chain, not just at the production side, but across the value chain, all the way to the user. So what do we mean by responsible mining? It can mean different things to different people, but some of the ideas that are of importance is the importance of sharing value and establishing the domains of trust across the value chain. Trust is of central importance to this discussion of minerals and metals. Responsible governance through well-defined regulatory frameworks that are enforced, greater accountability, oversight, transparency to address the grievances of people affected negatively by a minerals project, addressing proactively also the issues of conflict and injustice. Thirdly, inclusivity and participation of stakeholders. It is so very important to have voice and to have some kind of input into the decision-making about these minerals projects, because they affect lives and livelihoods of people. And therefore, it's really important that the local community who are directly affected and those indirectly affected have a say in this, but that there's also benefit sharing to allow for greater value creation and value distribution. Fourthly, circularity in production and use of mineral resources, which reduce the need for new and virgin materials through keeping the minerals in circulation in the economy as long as possible, while ensuring that the benefits of the added value are shared also with the owners of the minerals and the people of the regions, and it does not only accumulate to those at the downstream of the value chain where most of the circularity may happen. All this necessarily involves, ladies and gentlemen, actions across several agencies and sectors: government, industry, financials, UN system, civil society. And this is what makes it so important that we all engage in such dialogues and engage in the discussions that we are having today. And this is also why UNEP has identified the mineral sector as so important for its midterm strategy, because it speaks to climate change, it speaks to biodiversity loss, it speaks to pollution and waste. So all of these three together are very much visible in the context of the mineral sector. Today's speakers will not only focus on the UNEA resolution and looking towards UNEA 6, but will also share information on the activities of the Secretary General's working group on extractives. We have also here partners from the UN Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the Intergovernmental Forum on Minerals, Metals, and Sustainable Development. Excuse me. As we look forward to UNEA 5, how can we better design our support to member states on this topic to ensure that mining is not only beneficial to communities and to the nations that have them, but also are good for the planet, to do not create the kinds of footprints that we've been having all this time? How can we have more responsible supply chains, empowered consumers, engaged communities, and accountable governments? So, ladies and gentlemen, before I close, I'm also very pleased again to recognize and thank our two esteemed co-chairs of the UNEA Resolution 512 intergovernmental process, Her Excellency Ms. Sakhalin Saeeda, the High Commissioner of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, and the Permanent Representative of Pakistan to the United Nations Environmental Programme, and Ms. Martine Ron-Brossard, the Deputy Head of International Affairs, the Division of Swiss Federal Office of the Environment. She's with us here today present, but she's unable to speak because, unfortunately, she's lost her voice. But Martine, very welcome. Thank you very much for your strong engagement, for your guidance throughout this process of this resolution, and for continued efforts towards bringing stronger governance into the sector. Ladies and gentlemen, I look forward to this conversation, and I turn it over to Hussein. Hussein, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ligia, for these excellent remarks and setting the tone. I think you have brought to the table a lot of materials and points that are all giving us a good sort of opening grounds for seeking ideas and thoughts from our audience here. There's a lot relating to sustainability aspects, as you said, relating to the value chain, the life cycle, and also how do we help governments in a more sustainable manner on this particular topic. So we are delighted to have the colleagues here, and thanks very much for these opening remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, as briefly mentioned by Ligia, Resolution 512 on the environmental aspects of minerals and metals management requests UNEP to convene transparent and inclusive intergovernmental regional consultations, including with the relevant international organizations, with regional and multilateral environmental agreements, and with relevant stakeholders acting as observers to feed into a global intergovernmental meeting to develop non-prescriptive proposals that could enhance the environmental sustainability of minerals and metals along with their life cycles. One of the mandates given to UNEP is to identify opportunities for enhanced international cooperation, including with the view to fostering capacity building and technological, technical, and scientific cooperation in the mining sector. During the dialogue today, UNEP colleagues will share information on the resolution and its implementation process, and together with our speakers, will reflect on potential avenues to enhance cooperation across the UN system to promote responsible and sustainable mining processes and practices. We have an excellent set of speakers with us today, representing the UNEP Secretariat, implementing this resolution, the United Nations Secretary General's Working Group on Extractives, regional economic commissions, as well as Intergovernmental Forum on Minerals and Metals for Sustainable Development. The dialogue is meant to be interactive, so we look forward to you all freely sharing your insights, suggestions, ideas, and inputs. I'll briefly introduce the panels before we get started. We are joined today by Mrs. Jehaza Subatri, who is the head of Consumption and Production Unit in UNEP's Industry and Economy Division. Our second speaker is Maria Jose Baptista, our colleagues in the New York office of UNEP, who is representing the UNEP, the UN Secretary General's Working Group on Transforming the Extractive Industries for Sustainable Development. Our third speaker represents a Regional Economic Commission, UN ECLAC, Mr. Rodrigo Furtado Messias. Welcome on board, all of you. Finally, we'll have also Mr. Gregoire Beloas, Senior Policy Advisor at the Intergovernmental Forum on Minerals and Metals for Sustainable Development. As it was mentioned by Ligia, unfortunately, Ms. Martine Ron Brossard, bonjour Martine, who is the Deputy Head of International Affairs Division of Federal Office for the Environment of Switzerland and one of the co-chairs of the implementation of the resolutions unwell today and cannot speak and plan, but I'm sure she is observing and will definitely benefit also from this discussion and share with us perhaps her thoughts in chat as well. The second co-chair, Excellency Mrs. Sakleen Sidia, who is the High Commissioner for representative Pakistan to United Nations Environment Program, is also unwell to join us. We wish her a good recovery. With that, we are coming to the point where I would like to invite my colleague Jehiza to give us an update from the Secretariat of UNEP and also this process as how we are actually preparing for this intergovernmental meeting next week. What have been the recent progresses with regards to the resolution 5/12 of the UNEA and what lies ahead in the next few weeks or months going to the UNEA 6 next year in February 2024. With that, Jehiza, over to you.
Thank you very much, Hossein, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I have a few slides that I'm going to share, and then the Secretariat can also present that to you in their package. I want to maybe just check whether my slides are visible.
Yes, we can see that.
Okay. Thank you. So I'll start, first of all, by, on behalf of our co-chairs for the intergovernmental process of Resolution 512, to greet you on their behalf. You've already heard that they have health issues. Martine from Switzerland is actually with us today, but she unfortunately have no voice, so you will not be hearing from her. So this presentation is also on their behalf. UNEA 5 adopted Resolution 12 on environmental aspects of minerals and metals management. To give you a brief recap of what the resolution is actually about, this resolution focuses on improving the environmental aspects of minerals and metals management across their full life cycle. And that's the difference with the former resolution 419 that Leisure mentioned, which was more about mineral resource governance and where the life cycle dimension was not present. And the resolution has a number of operating paragraphs. One is on the convening of transparent and inclusive intergovernmental regional consultations that involve relevant international organizations, regional and MEAs, and relevant stakeholders as observers to feed into a global intergovernmental meeting with the aim of developing non-prescriptive proposals to enhance the environmental sustainability of minerals and metals along their full life cycle in line with Agenda 2030. Operating paragraph 3 has 3 components. One is to take stock of existing activities and actions to enhance environmental sustainability of minerals and metals, and to identify best practices, including with business, standards, guidelines, tools, technologies, as well as the use of renewable energy in mining, because very often we think of mining materials feeding into other sectors. A second component is about identifying opportunities for enhanced international cooperation, including with a view to fostering capacity building and technical, and scientific cooperation in the mining sector, in particular with developing countries, as well as to identify possible ways forward for consideration by UNEA 6. The other 2 operating paragraphs, 4 is on requesting the UNEP-ED to strengthen scientific, technical, and policy knowledge with regard to SEND, and to support global policies and action regarding the environmentally sound extraction and use of SEND. Operating paragraph 5 requests UNEP-ED to compile a report on knowledge gaps in relation to the environmental aspects of tailings management. Just to clarify the scope of this resolution 512, it explicitly excludes mineral fuels, and the scope includes the full life cycle of minerals and metals, ranging from extraction, processing, refining, tailings management, waste management, rehabilitation of sites and closed or abandoned mines, as well as manufacturing and recycling, really across the whole value chain. The global intergovernmental meeting that both Leisure and Hussein referred to, the objectives of that meeting is to, first of all, address the mandate of the resolution. One of the core objectives is to develop non-prescriptive proposals by member states that will be reported to UNEA 6. At the end of the global meeting, and similar to what we have had for all of the regional meetings that we have already concluded, we will be having a co-chair's summary report, as well as a progress report of the UNEP Executive Director as mandated by the resolution towards UNEA 6. Based on the conversations with member states and the co-chairs, the shared expectations is to have active engagement of member states, and we've seen that happen on operating paragraphs 2, 3A, and 3B at the regional consultations, and expected to take place in a similar manner next week at the global meeting. And the objective is to crystallize and refine and prioritize where relevant the non-prescriptive proposals that member states have made at the regional meetings through written submissions, and new ones may emerge at the global meeting next week. We have also developed a background document for the global meeting. There's a series of links at the end of this presentation where you will more easily find access to the various documents that are referred in the resolution. And the background document actually analyzes the oral submissions that came through during the intergovernmental regional consultations, as well as the written inputs that we have received from member states and observers. So to unpack a little bit, and this is what we tried to do together with our co-chairs, because member states asked for a little bit of an elaboration of what could be understood by a non-prescriptive proposal. And in the context of this process, a non-prescriptive proposal is taken to be a formal suggestion for enhanced international cooperation or possible ways forward in the context and scope of the resolution. And a non-prescriptive proposal may include, but is not restricted to, a proposal to encourage or work towards strategies, measures, options, recommendations, activities, principles, goals, agreements, or guidelines. They can lead to short-term voluntary, creative, or innovative solutions, while member states advance discussions towards possible multilateral solutions. Within the mandate of Resolution 512 lies the expectation that the proposals resulting from this process will be put forward for consideration by UNEA early next year. To recap the various outcomes of the intergovernmental regional consultations that have taken place in the 5 UN regions, a total of 38 non-prescriptive proposals emerged from the 5 regional meetings. In addition to that, member states, either in their individual capacity or as groups of countries, as well as observers, have submitted many written submissions. We've seen and noted complementarity and convergence across some of the regional outcomes, and by pulling those together, because of the overlap of some of the proposals coming from several regions, these 38 then ended up becoming 24 non-prescriptive proposals. They were grouped in the analysis document that is serving as a background document at a global meeting, and the 3 main categories. Some of the non-prescriptive proposals fall under policies and tools. Others look more at the entire value chain and life cycle, and some of the non-prescriptive proposals are specific and refer to platforms for international cooperation. The meeting that will be taking place next week is a 2-day meeting. It's a hybrid meeting, both in person as well as enabling virtual participation. It's an intergovernmental conversation, and day 1 actually is broken down with a morning plenary and an afternoon breakout model. Day 2 morning is a breakout, and day 2 afternoon is a plenary. The meeting will be co-chaired by the co-chairs of the process, Pakistan and Switzerland, as appointed by UNEA presidency. Participants are member states. We have managed, with the commitment of the member states, to secure 110 nominated national focal points for this process across all of the regions. And participants also involve international organizations, MEAs, and accredited organizations as observers. The modalities of engagement require registration, that's closing on the 1st of September, and eligible countries, developing countries and economies in transition, as well as accredited major groups, were eligible for travel support, and Secretariat has been supporting in that regard. The meeting will take place on the 7th and 8th of September at the International Conference Center in Geneva, Switzerland. This is tabular representation of the agenda of the meeting that I've mentioned earlier in terms of the plenary and the breakout sessions, as with all UNEP intergovernmental meetings. Member states may be able to have side meetings as regional groups. There will be side events. We did a call for side events, and we are planning to have 2 side events during the lunch breaks of day 1 and 2 during the lunch break of day 2. At the end of day 1, Switzerland is hosting a reception, and after the 2-day meeting, there will be a co-chairs summary that will then be used for the co-chairs to report back to the UNEA 6 presidency, and that will also inform the development of Executive Director UNEP progress report to UNEA 6. A number of links at the end of the PowerPoint that will be shared that actually takes you to the actual text of the resolution, as well as a web page that we have been using throughout the whole consultation process, where you can access background documents, regional consultation meeting reports, the written submissions that member states and other accredited organizations have made in the context of this process, as well as the summary reports of the regional consultation. The co-chair report of the global meeting will also be available on that website. Also some other background document in terms of links to Resolution 419 that actually did a lot of the preceding work on mining mandated by UNEA 4. The list of national focal points, if that may be of interest, as well as a number of other briefing sessions that we have been organizing. So we did one with the Geneva Environment Network last week. Today is the one with the EMG. And we are also organizing a joint event with the World Resources Forum that is actually taking place at the Geneva International Conference Center, but just the 3 days before our global meeting. The 2 meetings are not connected at all, but they're both talking about minerals and metals and mining. And before the global meeting starts on the 7th, so on the 6th in the afternoon from 4:30 to 6 p.m., we are organizing UNEP Secretariat, organizing a joint event with the World Resources Forum on a theme related to transforming mineral and metal value chains for enhanced sustainability, involving expert speakers that have come for the World Resources Forum, as well as expert speakers from partners and from member states who are actually joining us for the global meeting on the 7th and the 8th. And that's it. Thank you very much for your patience and attention. Back to you.
We can't hear you, Hussein.
Sorry, Jayza, thank you so much for this presentation. Very comprehensive, very informative, and bringing all dimensions relating to preparation of this important conference, and also the follow-up of the resolution of the UNEA. I was saying that in the meantime, while you were presenting, my computer went completely off, so I'm reconnecting via my cell phone, hopefully that the computer will be reestablished. But I'm happy that I'm able to come back. So thanks very much for this presentation, Jayza. And please, friends, colleagues, whoever has a question relating to any sort of background and also follow-up on the resolution of the UNEA and what's coming up, you're most welcome to bring your questions also in the chat box, and my colleagues will be able also to answer them as well. So let us move to the next item in our agenda, which is a presentation on the SG's working group on extractives. This is an excellent work that has been led by my colleague Maria Jose Baptista on behalf of the Secretary General's working group, to provide an update of how the UN system and UN agencies actually are collaborating on this particular topic, particularly on the critical energy transition minerals. So over to you, Maria.
Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, colleagues. Just a clarification, it is an effort, a very joint effort, and I'm very happy to see on this call many of our co-developers in this initiative, which is really a UN interagency effort on critical minerals. You have the name there on the screen, but so it is something that is coming from a working group that the Secretary General formed with, co-chaired by UNDP, UNEP, and the Regional Economic Commission. So I will tell you a little bit about the working group so you understand where we are coming from. And then I will go into some of the framing, the logic, and what we are expecting to achieve with this initiative entitled Harnessing Critical Energy Transition Minerals for Sustainable Development. Back in, I think, 2019 or 2020 maybe, a series of consultations were organized by the Secretary General with the idea to explore ways in which the extractive sector could actually contribute to sustainable development, since many of the developing countries have and rely on this sector. So after that process, it was a thorough consultation process, regional and global. He produced a policy brief where you can actually see what the priorities for the Secretary General are on work on extractives. And you see some of, a summary of these areas, of priority areas on the screen. It includes thinking about financing for development, thinking about governance and resources management, building a green economy around the sector, ensuring just transitions, also looking at technology, innovation, circular economy within the sector, and promoting regional and global collaboration. I won't go into the details, but there is a brief. I will include the link after my presentation in case you're curious. And the objectives of this working group, which was created right after this process, was to really take a look at what the UN was doing across the House on extractives, and try to see how we could develop a common narrative and framework on certain issues, maybe look at what policy recommendations are coming out of the UN, how we can foster better collaboration, align efforts, coordinate, also provide a central hub for information, and even maybe deploy some of the recommendations that the working group had been or will be issuing. So the working group, as I said, is co-chaired by UNDP, UNEP, the Regional Economic Commissions, but it also includes now our colleagues from UNCTAD, UNIDO, ILO, HCHR, so it's getting bigger and bigger. The idea is that the UN agencies that are working in this space come together in this working group and can contribute. For this particular year, we started last year looking at what we were doing. So we did an extensive mapping on what all of the agencies were doing in each one of those priority areas that I showed before. But then it was decided earlier this year by the DSG and the SG that the group should focus on helping countries, developing countries who have critical energy transition minerals, try to harness the opportunities that will come with the increasing demand due to the energy transition. So we are now focusing on that. As I was mentioning, a lot of the developing countries, the critical minerals for the energy transition are found in developing countries. And so they play a key role in this process. And you see that on the left a graphic from Irina that shows, for instance, for cobalt, copper, lithium, all of these have, a lot of the deposits are mostly concentrated in developing countries. On the right side, you see that a lot of these minerals are even not only in developing countries, but specifically in LDCs or LLDCs, which are highlighted on the column to the right. So the key question here that the working group was asking, and the Secretary General was asking us to figure out, is how can we help these countries harness the increasing demand for sustainable development. You have probably read in many, not only newspapers, publications, that there is an expected significant rise on demand for clean energy technologies and minerals that are needed for those technologies. By at least 4 times by 2040 is what IEA is telling us to meet the climate goals, particularly when it comes to electric vehicles. You see that with lithium, graphite, cobalt. So this means that a lot of investment will be coming in this space. Some have estimated it at 1.7 trillion, but some have estimated it way beyond that. And so the countries, including these developing countries that have these deposits, will have 20 to 30 years to figure out how to tap into these investment flows and how to do it in a way that is responsible, smart, and can build long-term sustainable development. Most importantly, I think creating safeguards for people and planet. It is no secret that there are significant impacts from mining as we do it today. Imagine if we have to increase the pace and the amount of extraction, and especially if you consider, for instance, let's say copper and lithium. Half of the global copper and lithium production is concentrated in areas where you have high levels of water stress, for instance. Then you have a lot of the areas where you find these minerals as well are actually in areas where you have indigenous communities. So there are many issues to be tackled on the environmental and on the social front, and we need to support countries in creating the safeguards for that. Now let me get into the initiative. So precisely what the group is trying to do is bringing together the knowledge that already we found was throughout the UN being produced and beyond the UN. By the way, you will see on the list partners, very key partners, including IGF, who's joining us today, who have been establishing standards, safeguards, principles, recommendations, tools, policies that could help countries really create those safeguards for harness and build, an economic transformation around the sector. So the idea is to provide technical and political support based on carefully curated solutions that we will found from all of these actors. Mobilize actors along the supply chain, not only governments, but all of the key actors that participate in this sector, to build trust, but also to introduce that development perspective, to enable new market opportunities. We want to enhance national capacities in these producer countries so that they can negotiate with the mining companies, attract investment, create partnerships, develop skills, manage the job transition that will happen in many of these countries. We want to bring or highlight or apply tools that can help them effectively manage the environmental and social impacts of the mining. And we want to help them build stronger governance and safeguards against things like illicit flows and corruption. And this is, I think, a very ambitious task, but it's, I think, worth the effort. The main outputs that we are thinking of in this first phase really is trying to put together a knowledge hub on extractives, a UN toolkit for actually the UN resident coordinators to have the basics on critical minerals, because they are being approached and countries are asking for information and for support. But we're also going to be working on a UN framework on just transitions for critical energy transition minerals. And this will identify the framework. The idea is to identify concrete measures that can include prescriptive, non-prescriptive policies, incentives, safeguards, guidelines that could be implemented in the short, medium, and long term to really transform the economy and to build a responsible mineral sector and sustainable mineral sector in these countries. So we're trying to really galvanize collective action for just transitions in critical energy transition minerals. And to do this, we are working with all of the partners that you see on the second layer. The idea of the framework really is to help countries plan for that economic transformation, empower producers, build strong regulatory environment, build trust and transparency, and effective environmental and social protection. We do this working, with a bunch of UN agencies. So the framework is being co-developed right now by UNEP, the Regional Economic Commissions, UNCTAD, ILO, UNIDO, OHCHR, but it will have inputs from many, many other actors, and you see them there on the screen. We will have consultations with the RCOs and the RCs, talking about whether what we are recommending is politically feasible, or if they've had other experiences, best practices on the ground that we could bring into the framework. We will have expert consultations. We will have also conversations with the private sector within those expert consultations, civil society, and with the countries and regions, including through processes like UNEA, where countries are giving, if given any feedback, that feedback would also be considered for the framework, because we are going to build on years of knowledge and experience and on what countries and others are already saying in this space. We're not going to reinvent the wheel. We're going to bring also together the producer countries with the consumer countries. We need to build trust, not only between these countries, also between neighbors who are going to be competing, or within a country, between the government and the local communities. We want to try to harmonize effective approaches, bringing in voices from different parts of the value chain so that we can harmonize the many, many safeguards that exist and create the enabling conditions for this economic transformation that we want, for reliability, for resilience, and for benefit sharing. Just the final slide to show you the complexity of the consultations that we will have with all of these actors that I mentioned. The main message here is that, first of all, consultations will happen from November until February 2024, and we expect to have a draft of this framework by March 2024. And then you can see that we will be talking to these different, there will be spaces online and in person to be discussing some of the recommendations that the UN agencies will be putting together. By the end of October, we will have some of these background papers. So let me stop here, and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria Jose, for this excellent presentation and showing the work on the mandate and the expertise and tools and the guidances of all kind of UN entities with regards to this topic, and how these are interrelated and can support countries as well as the UN system itself. So that's very elaborative. I just noticed a question by Martin on the chat box. I don't know if you have seen that also. That is around the interconnection of your initiative of the Secretary General and what is actually happening at the intergovernmental level. What are the correlationship? If you can also give some lights on that, would be wonderful.
Yes. Yes, Martin, happy to see you connected. So the countries will be definitely one of the strongest actors, part of the actors that we're consulting through various channels. But I think for the UNEA process, where we are focusing on these safeguards for the environment and for people, we will need to bring in the recommendations that countries will be giving on these non-prescriptive measures or flagging within the process. That will be brought in through UNEP and others. We will make sure to inform that particular part of the framework with whatever is recommended from countries. We will also, through the team of the Secretary General's Climate Action team in New York, they are organizing some consultations with countries for the Climate Ambition Summit. So that's another space. We're going to organize also regional conversations. The regional economic commissions will organize regional discussions with the countries. So there will be many, many spaces where countries can look at what is being proposed and recommend and voice give us their feedback. Martin, thank you.
Thank you, Marie-José. I hope this has answered Martin's question. Thanks very much again. So colleagues, whoever has a question, again, please make use of the chat box. And I saw that Jaiza also has posted a number of documents and information with regards to the international meeting that will take place in the next few days. So these are very useful materials also to study. Thanks very much for that. Now,
Hussein, I think, sorry to interrupt. I think
Yeah.
Jahiza has her hand up. Maybe she wants to add to what I responded to Martin. Sorry.
Yes, Jaiza, go over to you. Yes, please.
Thank you. Just to complement what Marie-José has already said, we're seeing how concrete integration between 512 and the SG initiative is happening. Many of the partners with whom we work with, and we're going to be hearing from regional economic commissions, from the IGF later today, are working with us both on 512 and on the SG initiative. And recently, if I can take the example of the Africa Minister Conference of Environment, AMSEN, that took place a couple of weeks ago, we've seen a resolution that actually was endorsed by African member states that reflects very faithfully, actually, the Africa regional consultation outcomes of 512, as well as the SG critical minerals focus under the SG's initiative. So member states are already integrating that, and within UNEP, we're also working very closely, with Marie-José, but also other UN agencies on both fronts. I just wanted to maybe share that as an example of how that is happening very concretely right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaiza, for this sort of extra information and clarification. Thanks very much. Fatima, I see your hands up. Do you have a question, Fatima? No? No? Okay, that was a mistake. Great. Thanks very much. So let's move on. Speaking of the partners, now we have the pleasure of having our colleague from the Economic Commission for Latin America and Caribbean, who actually is one of our partners with whom we are collaborating, not only in the framework of the implementation of the resolution, but also under the working group on extractives. The Regional Economic Commission for Latin America and Caribbean is a partner to us, and we are joined by Mr. Rodrigo Furtado Messias from the Natural Resources Division at ECLAC for an update on the Commission's work on mining and opportunities for collaboration within the UN system. Rodrigo, we would be very happy to hear a bit about the seminar that is coming up also next week on mine closure procedures and how can we engage. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Hussein. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. Pleasure to greet everyone from Santiago in Chile, where the headquarters of ECLAC is. Just to confirm that you can see my presentation in full screen, I hope.
We can see and hear you very well.
Thank you, Hussein. So as an economic commission, I first would like to start with some few graphics that I believe represent well the context of the region in regards to mineral resources. But in general, the first graphic that you can see is the trade balance of the region, the whole Latin America and the Caribbean by material group. As you probably know, the region is a net exporter in its collective of different natural resources. In the first graphic, for example, you can see that even though we do hold that role, as from 2015, the region as a group has become a net importer of fossil fuels. And at the same time, we have observed that the region has been going through a process of reprimarization of its exports, especially considering that the exports and dependence of raw materials have increased and represent right now more than half of the total exports of the region. And in general, it represents at least 10% of the GDP of the region. The second graphic, you can see the trade balance by different technological intensity. And the region is majorly an exporter of raw materials and even raw material manufacturers that the region used to be a net exporter. Since 2010, the region has also become a net importer of raw material manufacturers. I wanted to bring these graphics because they are going to be part of a forthcoming publication, the first Latin American and Caribbean Natural Resources Outlook that we are about to launch in the upcoming months. And well, this is based on data from Comtrade, but of course, this outlook that we are preparing has a lot of information, for example, from the Global Material Flow database from the International Resource Panel, ERP with UNEP. So we'll definitely share additional information on that. So Maria Jose and the colleagues mentioned there is this increasing demand of specific minerals, particularly to boost the transition, the energy transition, and the transition to the low carbon economies. And of course, the region of Latin America and the Caribbean has been gaining a lot of attention, especially because of the amount of reserves of these minerals that are present. As you can see, for example, the region is responsible. The columns are the production, and the small dots are the reserves aggregated in the whole region. The region is responsible for more than half of all silver production in the world, but as well, it's about 40% of copper and lithium. So this has definitely been increasing the pressure on the region to increase the production, and this, of course, has lots of impacts on the environment. Just to mention some additional economic data, for example, in 2021, Chile and Peru, more than 13% of their GDP came from the mineral activity, and over 60% of all their exports were mineral products. So based on that, of course, ECLAC has a long-standing tradition of working with member states to support them in different topics. One of them that we would like to highlight first is that we have established a permanent technical dialogue forum that is composed by different public institutions that are present in Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, and more recently Mexico, for countries that have lithium reserves and are in the process of producing or starting to. So we have defined a biennial action plan that promotes cooperation and knowledge exchange. We have organized several field visits. And for example, I just would like to highlight, because of course, lithium has been a hot topic in the region, in the world right now. And among this group, we have highlighted two specific studies that we are currently developing. The first one is on direct lithium extraction methods. And this is very interesting because there is a lot of hope that this kind of method will not only accelerate the production, but could also somehow minimize some of the environmental impacts that these kind of, for example, evaporation pools have in the middle of the salt flats that are where we can find the deposits of lithium. But of course, there are several challenges. For example, what are going to be done with the reinjection of waste. So we are developing a study to take a closer look into that. Another study that I wanted to highlight is indeed about a conceptual model on how to carry integral monitoring of the salt flats. Traditionally, mining projects would be monitored by project, but based on a Chilean model, we have identified and we are promoting that you need to really consider all projects integrated. So how we can actually monitor the different salt flats at the same time. Another topic that I wanted to bring is definitely the topic about mine closure. ECLAC has been working to analyze and understand the models, the different models that countries in the region have developed to proceed to manage mine after the project has ended. So based on several studies that we have carried, we developed a methodological guide to support countries in the region on how they could pursue this process in terms of legislation, financial resources, governance. And this guide is currently being updated. It will become an online course, and this has also led to very concrete technical assistance to one of the countries that I will explain to you in a minute. Well, these are just a few of the activities that I would like to highlight, but there are several others happening at our region. We do count with a very interesting project that has been going on for a few years with the support of the German corporation. And I would say that that has definitely helped us to strengthen our presence and activities in the mining workstream. And we are collaborating with different countries in the Andean region to support more sustainable practices. For example, we are facilitating a South-South cooperation between Chile and Peru. Right now, we are supporting Peru to pilot an application of the methodology for generating mining statistic in the copper sector from Chile in regards of production, water usage, energy consumption. This will definitely help them produce additional data and increase transparency in the sector. We have organized several activities already in that regard. Some of the colleagues might recall that earlier this year, we did organize a seminar on multi-purpose mining infrastructure. And we had a presentation from colleagues from UNEP about the sustainable infrastructure principles. So this is already a very concrete example of cooperation between the agencies. We are about to publish as well a study on the desalination and how that could be an opportunity for mining projects in places where there is a scarcity of water. But of course, there are several environmental impacts that need to be considered and tackled in doing the desalination, and that's highlighted in this report. We also have an online course that we pretty much gather all the knowledge that we have been producing on lithium. It's ongoing right now. It's definitely also important to highlight the work that our colleagues at the Division of Sustainable Development, also here at ECLAC, are doing on environmental mining liabilities. And of course, in managing the Escazú agreement that most of you probably have already heard of. Regarding access to information, they have been discussing a lot about environmental defenders this year and how to support countries in the implementation. Well, in moving forward, I think there are three elements that we need to keep in consideration. First one is definitely the internal coordination among the agencies, among ourselves. And I think that the working group has been amazing in doing that. Several of the opportunities that I mentioned here, and even this very presentation, I think have only been possible because of this working group. Of course, there were and there are different mechanisms for the collaboration between the whole UN system, but having a specific mandate on a given topic, I think it's something that definitely has improved a lot how we collaborate. So in addition to this internal coordination, there is definitely room for working on cross-fertilization. and making sure that we influence each other on the work on the ground. And here comes the seminar we are organizing next week that Hussein was mentioning at the beginning. This seminar is part of a technical assistance that we received a request from the Chilean National Geology and Mining Service. And they are looking into how they can include climate change criteria into their process of mine closure. And we have already confirmed the presentations by UNDP and UNEP regional offices. I think especially on this work on the ground, not only the regional commissions, but also the national, the country offices, the regional offices of the different agencies, and the resident coordinating system is going to play an important role. Just to mention, we have been receiving several requests for technical assistance, and this is definitely something we'll be looking forward to receiving the support from other UN colleagues. For example, right now we are about to start a technical assistance to Bolivia, to the Ministry of Mining and Metallurgy, for them to support them in developing some kind of policy instruments to promote gender equality in the mining sector. And in addition to this work on the ground, we also need, of course, to collaborate in intergovernmental processes. Of course, the regional consultation on UNEA 5/12 that we are talking about today, we were very happy to organize that here in Santiago, and I think it was a very groundbreaking moment on how we can collaborate further in this kind of processes. Just to mention that in the region happens every year a conference of American mining ministries. ECLAC is a traditional partner of this moment, and we are going to include this year in our traditional presentation an explanation about the working group initiative that Maria Jose was just telling you. And at some point, we are going to organize a regional consultation on the working group initiative. So I think there are several opportunities for us to continue collaborating on this topic. And what I think we have to do is definitely to combine high level in technical work and to share as much as possible the different materials, the different opportunities that each of us are doing, because I know that not only ECLAC, but all the other agencies and commissions are doing an amazing job on the ground. I think we just need to increase the coordination and make sure that everyone is informed. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present here.
Thank you, Rodrigo, for this excellent presentation. I saw already one question about your course on lithium, and they would like to know what is entailing. So could you give us some details about this course?
Sure, the course is online completely. We are in the second edition this year. The first edition last year, we organized it only for government employees by invitation. But this year, we are combining both government employees from countries that are working with lithium, but also we opened a call for different students throughout the region. It's very interesting because it covers different aspects of the whole lithium world. It covers from geology to trade, to environmental impacts, to social responsibility, to community engagement. It's 6 modules that colleagues do several lessons online, and we combine them with synchronous meetings every week, where we bring the different experts from governments, but also from the private sector, from communities to give a presentation. It has been quite interesting, and we are seeing how we can make sure that this course is expanded and become easier to organize and disseminate as from next year. I see my colleagues is sharing some relevant links in the chat, but happy to answer any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this answer, Rodrigo. Thank you so much also for the presentation. We would have one more presentation, and then we will have a section on the question and answer and anything that you would like to know more. And hopefully within the next 25 minutes, we can close this dialogue. So let us now move to our colleague, Gregoire Belois, an important player and partner for us, and we would like him to make a presentation including on potential area on the harmonization of mineral standards. And we're keen to hear your inputs to help advances the discussion and the design of the UN and non-UN intervention on the topic of environmental aspects of mineral and metals management. So with that, Gregoire, over to you.
Thank you very much. I think I sent my presentation. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Cool. So thank you very much, Osen. Thanks a lot. So and thank you very much for allowing me to present the IGF, the Intergovernmental Forum on Mining, Minerals, Metals, and Sustainable Development, and how it fits into this whole ecosystem and what IGF can do to help advance the process. I'm Grégoire Bellois. I'm geologist by background, and I'm senior policy advisor, working especially in critical minerals, mine closure, ISM, and mine closure a little bit as well. So the next slide, please. I will just begin just a small introduction of the IGF. So it's a global forum of mining producing countries from all over the world. We currently have 81 members, and the goal is to improve mining governance of to help achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. The IGF is a voluntary initiative that comes from the World Summit on Sustainable Development in Johannesburg in 2002, and it was formally created in 2005 as a UN Type 2 partnership. With the objective to share experience between mining producing countries in relation to sustainable development. The initial funding came from Canada, which also organized the annual general meetings in Geneva with the support of UNCTAD. And in 2015, ISD took over the secretariat of the IGF, and then new activities have been developed. We then extended the service to assessment of public policies in relation to mining and sustainable development, some guideline and guidance for government, capacity building, technical assistance, and knowledge development and dissemination. Next slide, please. So here's a map of all member countries. As you can see, they're quite spread from all over the world. As the IGF is a UN Type 2 partnership, any member state of the United Nations may become an IGF member. And as it's a voluntary partnership, there's no legal, contractual, nor financial requirement from member country. Something that it's important to note as well. Next slide, please. And here's the main tool of the IGF, the mining policy framework. It has been developed in 2013, and the idea is to reflect all the governance standards to ensure that the mining sector really contribute to sustainable development in the country where it's where you have some mining. And it's organized around 6 main pillars. First one being the legal and policy environment. Second one, the financial benefit optimization. Third one, socioeconomic benefit optimization. Then environmental management, post-mining transition, and artisanal and small-scale mining. And you can see climate change and gender equality are sort of transversal issues that are really incorporated into each of these 6 member. It's really a demand-driven process, and the objective of this MPF evaluation is to assess the situation of the country and all mining laws and policies of the country are aligned with the MPF, and all gaps can be addressed through revision updates of law, policies, and regulation. Important to mention that this mining policy framework is being revised this year. We are at the final step of this revision. We want to incorporate new practices, new standards, and new regulation on this MPF because it's already 10-year-old. And so the draft is open for consultation on our website. So we invite you to read it, to share any comment that you can have, with the idea of to disclose the release of final document during our next AGM that will take place in Geneva in November 2023. Next slide, please. So these are the themes covered by the IGF. As you can see, we cover almost all aspects of mining and mining governance. So we have the arsenal small-scale mining, the environmental management, that include all the biodiversity, the notion of waste, and we were talking about tailings, so waste also a really important topic. Water, of course. You have all the environmental and social impact assessment. So you have all this consultation with community, which are also really important. The local content policy, mine closure, and also the post-mining transition, and tax-based erosion and profit shifting. And you have also all this other kind of issue about gender equality, new technology and innovation, and all this new technology impact the mining sector, the countries, the workers, the communities. And of course, the critical minerals and climate action. And I would say this is the theme that is most, we make a lot of progress, a lot of work on this theme to try to advance, because we have a lot of requests from our member country on this, saying that what should we do with our undermount? How should we behave, I would say, in this environment where there is a rush towards some these critical minerals or critical raw materials or energy transition materials. It depends on how we call them. Next, please. Next slide, please. And so IGF also developed a set of tools really for our member country. Main tool of the guidance for governments. They're developed through really extensive research and consultation with many stakeholders with a member country, and they have to be validated by our members to be released. We have currently 4 guidance for documents, and there really is a toolbox for policymakers to understand and implement good practices and to make sure that their mining sector really benefits the communities and the country, while the impact of mining are mitigated. These 4 guidance are on ISM, on the local content, on environmental and social impact assessment, and on environmental management. And other tools also are developed, such as the specific guidelines on tax, for example, on mine closure, on gender. Some pieces of research also are being developed just to inform our member states on the new technologies, on climate change, on critical minerals. We have some briefing notes and also some case studies. And case study, there's a lot of appetite for these case studies from our member country, because it's really what really happened in the ground, and they like to learn from their peer what works, what doesn't work, what are the successes, what are the challenges that country actually feel on the ground while advancing mining policy towards sustainable development. And and all this work, there are support for capacity building, for technical assistance, for knowledge dissemination through different conferences, partnerships, etc. And last thing, which is really important, and this work cannot be done without multiple partnership with all kinds of different stakeholders, every really different kind of stakeholder. This UNEA resolution is one of these partnerships that is really interesting, bring many new ideas, new consultation from different other stakeholders on the topic, but we also have partnership with the Netherlands Commission for Environmental Assessment, from the ASEAN Association of Southeast Asian Nations, from the African Tax Administration Forum, the GIZ, International Women in Mining, but of course also all these other UN agencies. Main one is UNCTAD, because UNCTAD hosts our IGM since the beginning of the IGF, but also UNEP, UNDP, UNEC, UNESCAP, and ILO. And IGF is also directly involved in many working groups and initiatives. So for example, we were a member of the EPRM, the European Partnership for Responsible Minerals, that bring together civil society organization, supply chain actors, and countries to try to improve the life of ISM to consider more the life of the community, the ISM, and the environment. We're a member also of the Global Battery Alliance, And we take part with the World Economic Forum Working Group on risk associated with the supply gap of the critical raw material. And just to conclude the last part, this notion of partnership and collaboration is really essential for our work. And from my takeaway from all this regional consultation is really there are also a real appetite for all stakeholders for such collaboration to really share expertise and improve efficiency. And our mandate is quite clear, the mandate of the IGF. We have to support all member countries to improve their governance in relation to mining and sustainable development. And this is why we plan to continue and enhance our collaboration with our working group on extractive, for example. And this process, this UNEA resolution, is already, I think, it's already successful from all the proposals that have emerged. And the IGF, as an observer in this process, will really stand ready to continue to support UNEP in any possible way. And again, we look forward to further collaboration, and we would be really happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Gregoire, for this excellent presentation. There are some questions that are posed in understanding actually what the IGF is and how its relationship is with what, for example, member states have sort of adopted and decided in the Environmental Assembly, and also its relationship with the work that Maria Jose is doing and the framework proposal that she brought to attention of the meeting. So I think there is a need for us to maybe shed some light on the interconnectivity of all these processes and how do they converge under this mandate also by the UN Environmental Assembly. So maybe Gregoire, you would give some short explanation, and Maria Jose as well, because we have only less than 15 minutes. And then we have also questions and answer part as well. So Gregoire first and Maria Jose next. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. So we, in terms of the work that Maria Jose is doing, I will let her explain, and IGF stand ready to help and to support. I would say IGF is our focal points are member of the mining ministries of the country that are members. So these are our entry points, and we are here to add the mining ministries principally, as opposed, for example, for many of the UNEP focal points are from the Environment Ministry. And this is where this initiative and all this collaboration are really important, because at all level, intergovernmental, but also at country level, we really often see this disconnect between the mining side from one side, the environmental side, and you also have the financial side, the finance ministry most of the time. And even in countries, they work on the same project and they don't necessarily communicate together. And I think what I would say the IGF can bring is this network of focal points from the mining ministries, and bring really the voice of, I would say, the voice of the miners to the table. We're not an UN agency, but we came from a UN process, I would say. So we have the UN legitimacy, but we are not a UN agency. I think it was something that was written in the chat. In terms of collaboration, again, our mandate is to help advance the sustainable management of resources for member countries. So any initiative that goes in this direction, from our mandate, we have to support this initiative. So it's really, I would say, win-win situation when we're really ready to support any kind of initiative that goes in this direction.
Great, thanks very much. Maria Jose, over to you.
Very quick, because I know we're out of time. Yeah, I was explaining in the chat that IGF is one of our key partners. It is one of a list of partners who are already working in the space, who have recommendations that could be useful and be brought into specific parts of the framework. So we're working very closely with Murciani and Greg, the head, to bring those in. We're also working on a joint session at their annual meeting with where all of their country members will be at, and they will discuss some of the recommendations that are being put forward by the initiative that are also aligned with the recommendations that they have provided in the forum. So we are working on several fronts to align, harmonize efforts, bringing in the good thinking and work from IGF. Thank you.
Thanks, Maria Jose. I hope that
I'm
this
sorry,
has
just if I
answered.
can just, I
Yes,
see
go
a question from Martin about the fact, is the IGF mining framework a new framework? And no, it was first released in 2013, so it's already 10 years old, and we are in the process of reviewing it because at that time the Sustainable Development Goals were not were not there. So now we need to include all this the SDG and all the other initiatives and standards that have been developed over the last 10 years. So no, it's not a new framework, but it's a way to assess how a country, mining country, is ready to really take the best of its mining endowment.
Thanks very much for that clarification also. Thanks to both of you. It is time also for the public and the audience to raise any questions that you might have. If that is the case, please first raise your hand and then turn on the camera and present your question to our panelists. Okay, I don't see any hands for now, but I would like to raise some questions to the panel still, benefiting from this remaining amount of time. And I would like to maybe start with Jahiza. Jahiza, you have been following on this intergovernmental mandate of the UNEA. And I'd like to maybe to have some insight from you on the challenges actually that you have so far had in follow-up of this mandate and your expectations both from the UN entities but also from the other sort of actors to sort of pave the way and to facilitate the next steps towards the UNEA 6 and the rest of this process.
Thank you very much, Hossein. I think the challenges are two-front. One is more of a process logistics related one. UNEA has several political processes ongoing in the run-up to UNEA 6, and member states have told us that they are extremely stretched. And in particular, this is relevant for smaller countries and smaller delegations, very often one-person delegations to participate in multiple meetings. Very simple example, our global meeting is taking place on the 7th and the 8th next week, but the open-ended working group, the Science Policy Panel on Chemicals and Waste, is also taking place as from the 7th of next week in Bangkok. And often we have the same national focal points who are actually covering different processes. So that's a real challenge. But nevertheless, we managed to get over 100 national focal points nominated. And the fact that we are doing the meetings in a hybrid mode also helps for some of those member states that are not able to join in person to also join, we hope, the full meeting in a remote manner. That also comes with challenge because of time zones, but it's been helping. On the substantive part, the main challenges is depending on who you have in the room or in the meeting. If it's a representative from a Minister of Environment, the technical expertise and the interventions and the focus and the priorities are specific to environmental elements. When it comes to national focal points in some cases, even for UNEP and this UNEA 512, we do have national focal points that actually come from ministries of mining. And they come with a very different perspective. And at times we even have foreign affairs, national focal points, permanent representatives, and their perspective is very different. And actually, this is a challenge, but it's actually a good thing, because by putting those people together in a room, even though at times they come from different countries, we are actually bridging that conversation gap that is so much relevant even at the country level. And then the third thing that I maybe wanted to share with colleagues on the meeting today is this notion of looking at the value chain across the life cycle is still new. I mean, we've been doing that in a number of sectors, but for the mining sector, we note that our membership, our constituency, still are focusing very heavily on the mine operations segment of the value chain, as opposed to the whole of the life cycle. So looking at manufacturing, at processing, at end use, at consumption, at recovery and recycle, those are dimensions that are relatively new in that space. And we think that as a UN system, this is an area where there is a lot of need for further capacity building, for technical assistance, for peer-to-peer learning. And this is being asked, you know, it's not us telling the member states, they're asking explicitly for this. And Rodrigo is nodding, because with Grégoire and Rodrigo, we've actually been following up post the regional consultations. How can we collectively within the UN system, but with our extended partners outside the UN, continue to team up and join forces to be stronger and to be able to better respond to those specific asks from member states to make mining and the products that actually enter value chains more responsible, more sustainable, not just from an environment perspective, but from an economic perspective and from a social perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaiza. And this also speaks to the theme of the UNEA, which is about acceleration of the SDGs, which is the sticking point. This is the glue, actually, that we can utilize in bringing all these sectors together, showing that we have all a common objective to achieve, and that hopefully will help different views to come together and be able to allow us to have a strong mandate on this particular topic as well. We have 2 more minutes, but there are a few questions here also on my list that I would like also still benefit from this remaining minutes. Rodrigo, give us a sense of what are the challenges and opportunities of collaboration between the public sector and the private sector on this, because we know that, of course, the stakes are different. Very quick and short.
A very good question, and perhaps difficult to answer in limited time. I think we have been talking a lot about trust building. I think that's going to definitely be key, not only between the private sector and the governments, but between UN institutions, between countries producing minerals and countries that are buying those minerals to industrialize them. And trust building takes time. Definitely transparency, clarity, having the rules of the game clear enough is something that helps. And this is what we have been trying to do to really to guide them and support them in understanding what is going on, what are the opportunities that they have, and how they can face the challenges that are going to arise. I think that's probably the path ahead.
Thank you so much for that explanation. And Marie-Jose, one question to you is, beyond the critical minerals initiative, what are the suggestions that you might propose to us that will allow countries, for example, have better access to knowledge and technologies relating to sustainable minerals? What are the opportunities? What are the areas where the UN system can perhaps help and assist member states in those 2 aspects as well? If you can. And also let me at the same time also ask the question to Grégoire so that he can also answer in terms of priorities of action in international and UN system cooperation. What are the key priorities for action, Grégoire, in your point of view? So first Marie-Jose and then Grégoire.
So yeah, thank you, Hossein. I think particularly when it comes to critical minerals, we have seen you know, there is a lack of transparency on certain parts of the value chain. So it's very difficult to understand where things are, the prices, how are they determined, who benefits exactly, how much. So all of these elements of lack of transparency, the UN plays a critical role in trying to bring together not only the governments, but the other parts of the value chain to allow or enable spaces like the Knowledge Hub, but others as well, where you can digest the information, ask for the information, and guide certain countries that maybe do not have the capacities to understand that information, to make decisions based on that information. So I think there is a critical role that this working group and this initiative could play in that space. Let me maybe wrap up here because I know time is
up. Over to you, Gregoire. Last point.
Yeah, thank you very much.
On the priorities.
Yeah, and the priorities, I think what's really important to keep in mind, especially in the context of critical minerals, is first towards minerals, is that we make sure we don't aggravate the problem. And this rush towards critical minerals is the idea is to fight and to tackle the climate change, to have the raw material necessary to decarbonize the world, to save it from the climate change. But climate change is only one of the issue, and you have many crises. You have this climate crisis, you have the biodiversity crisis, you have the pollution crisis. And by solving one problem, really, we should make sure that we don't create other problems or we don't aggravate the issue. This is why we need to have some harmonization, some rules in countries, but some harmonization so that not to have a race to the bottom between producing countries as well, that these producing countries are protected, are made stronger so that they can protect also this area. Like also to mention the indigenous people and the natural reserves, that most of the new reserves for critical minerals and for all kinds of minerals are located in this area, close to urban center, close to indigenous people lands, and on the protected areas. This is a real issue, and we really need to take care and to make sure that we really consider this issue before rushing to access to these minerals.
Thanks very much, Gregoire. In short, make sure that the safeguards are well in place to avoid the harm and then do the good. So let's put it in that way. Thanks very much for that. And then there are 3 points that I want, and apologies for extending this to more than 1 hour and a half. But bear with me maybe with a few points here. One is that please register for this global intergovernmental meeting, which is going to take place on the 1st of September. Registration deadline is actually the 1st of September. So please benefit from this remaining time and then ask Jaiza and the other colleagues for any information relating to this important meeting. So I suppose that the link to registration, etc., we can also post it here, and information with regards to the following meetings, including the one in Switzerland. So that please take note of that. The second thing, I would very much like to acknowledge the huge support and the work that has been done by Angela Karaoke, our dear staff who has been behind this whole meeting and this process. So thank you so much, Angela, for all the preparations, including to me. So thanks very much for that, and appreciate that. There was also a very nice offer by our colleague from UNEA, Gunther, that the UNEA also is ready to extend its support to this process and thinking, and there's a proposal that Gunther has also pasted on the chat. I don't need to read it. So thank you so much, very much, Gunther, for that offer. Thank you to all of you who have taken your time to attend this dialogue. The findings, the summary of the points shared and the discussion will be issued for your further reflection, and also for extension to those who have not been able to attend this meeting. Thank you so much. Wish you a very continuation of a good day, and then if your days are coming to closure, continuation of week, and see you soon in our future Nexus Dialogues. All the best, and thank you so much.
Thank you, colleagues. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.